Hi there, Kimberly Flanagan of Kimberly's Quilts. So I have just successfully completed my third Designs by JuJu tree skirt, and I'm actually starting on a fourth. I'm making ones for members of the family. And I was having a conversation last night with one of my friends, and she said to me, I'm getting ready to embark on my first one. So what do you wish you knew before you started, and that would have made it easier from your first one to now your fourth one? And so we were talking, and she said, you really should make a video about that because I think these tips would be helpful to others. So I hope that you can find some of these tips useful. Coming from you from a different place today, I'm actually in my sewing room. I usually don't video in here only because it's a mess, so forgive the mess behind me. But let me jump into some of the things that I wish I had known before I started my very first one. Let me start with the directions. The directions are amazing. The JuJu team does a very, very good job, but they are long, they are extensive. Do not waste your time or the paper to print all of these out. I have a little trick, and I've done this for a long time. I've done this for years as an educator, especially when I'm teaching, so that I don't have to carry as much stuff with me to classes and everything. Email yourself a PDF of the instructions, and then on your phone or on your tablet, open them up, and then just use them from there. There are 4 pages from the directions that I do print out. Each one of the segments, there's an inner, there's a middle, and there's an outer segment. I do these because I do need these in one of the steps. And then I also print out the layout one. Honestly, being on my 4th one, I don't know why I need this one anymore. When you get to the assembly step, give yourself the permission and grace to lay this out however you want. Yes, there are a few little items in here, like you do want Santa's reindeer going. Those are all separate wedges in the inner. You probably want to put those in the right order. Okay, I'm just saying that. I know it's probably obvious, but let's just say, other than that, you can have creative genius with whatever you want. If you want the yarn shop to be in the back because you're not a knitter and you don't like that block, and it's your least favorite, hide it in the back. It doesn't have to be where she put it. If you want a certain one under Rudolph, put the certain one under Rudolph. This is a suggestion. It's not the holy grail that you have to abide by. So give yourself the creative freedom. So being on my 4th one, after the first one, this one is, I consider, useless. But the directions in and of themselves, not useless. But I did use them, followed them line for line on my first one, but do I need to anymore? No, because after you do the first or second block, most of the stitching and most of the process is the same. It's just maybe instead of it being a lighthouse this time, it's the church. It's kind of obvious once you get going, and if you've done machine applique before, you know what I'm talking about. So don't feel like you have to print all that out. And it doesn't just mean for this tree skirt. Use this little tip about emailing yourself the directions, especially if you have some sort of tablet. Open them on your tablet, follow along there, and then it's a whole lot less paper, clutter, and stuff to keep up with. That's my first tip. My second tip is going to be around a tool that you just really, really will make your life easier. And it's this tool called a trimmer by George. If you've never used one, it's actually got a little metal lip on this side. And when you lay it flat, it will make a little ledge for you to trimmer by George, up against. So here's a stitched out block. What you will do with the trimmer by George is when you have this on your cutting mat, if you fold back the white and you need to trim off the stabilizer here, it will snugly go up against that and protect your fabric, fold it up back, and allow you to trim that. nice little safe metal edge there and everything. So it's amazing. Then once you trim that down, you flip this over and it's just like a traditional, let me see if I can put this behind it. It's got the trim down lines. And because in applique, most of the time it's a 1/2 inch trim line instead of a 1/4 inch trim line, that dotted line is a little bit thicker and more pronounced on here. So it's easy to see when you lay it on top, when you flip it over and you lay it on top of that seam line that you want to trim down. You can do this project with just a regular ruler and rotary cutter. Absolutely, you can. But if you're going to get into doing multiple tree skirts or even a lot of machine applique type projects, worth every penny of it. I think you can find them on Amazon. I've had mine for quite a few years, so I don't remember where I got it. But it will, you know, what if you've got that regular ruler? I've done it. We've all done it where we've got our ruler down and we're cutting and it slips a little bit and and now I've just wasted all the time on that project that I just appliqued out. So well worth the money. I will tell you though, when you use this, you have to use a 60mm rotary cutter. And that is because when this, let me see if I can turn this around and do it left-handed. See, so when this rides along through there, you see that screw that's on there, the 45mm rotary cutter isn't quite tall enough and it doesn't cut through everything. So you have to use a 60mm rotary cutter. Trimmer by George, if you're listening, if you could just make this a teeny smidge bit lower profile so that you can use your 45mm rotary cutter, that would be amazing. I'd be tempted to buy a second one of these if that happened. But I'm just not used to usually using my 60mm rotary cutter. Honestly, applique in this tool here is the only reason I have a 60mm rotary cutter. I use my 45 or my 28 for just about everything else I do. So Trimmer by George, will be a game changer when it comes to trimming up your blocks, and it will make it so that it really protects your finished product. So that's my second tip. What's my third tip? My third tip is when you look at the pattern, if you guys have done machine applique before, this is very similar to that. You're going to hoop your stabilizer, and then you're going to do a tack down stitch for your batting. You're going to take your hoop out, you're going to trim the batting. Sidebar here. Let's get into a discussion for a minute about trimming tools for your applique, trimming down the batting and the pieces. There are two types of scissors out there. They're the duck bill and they're the curved. I always get asked whenever I'm teaching applique classes, which one's ideal, which one's preferred, personal preference. I have to tell you, I have both and I use both. If I have something long like this, I like my duck bill because they take long, smooth, flat snips of the whatever I'm cutting off, and it goes much faster and I feel like I have a much cleaner finish. But if I have something that has lots of curves, like when you get into doing the applique pieces on here and I'm going around a doorway, or I remember on the ice cream shop, there's lots of little curves around the ice cream scoops. I like the curved. I think they both have their place. They both have their purposes where they excel at and that they give you challenges at. So not telling you you need to own both, but the question is always asked, which is better for machine applique? And I always hesitate, and then I say, it depends on what you're trimming. I have both. I use both. So let's get back to what I was saying. So the tip is, when you look at the directions and you pull them up, they have, she can't know what kind of fabric you're going to be using. This one I used a tonal white on white. If you see that bolt of blue fabric behind me, that's going to be my next one. So what I do is I put in the top thread for all of my stitch down lines, I put a very closely coordinating thread color. In this case, it was white. In that case, it's going to be light blue, to match the top thread. Why do I do that? I do that because when I start to assemble these and sew these together, ideally I'm going to be stitching that top seam line into the seam, and it's not going to be seen. But just in case I have a little wobble or something and that thread shows, JuJu's team cannot know what color fabric you're going to use to know what color thread to make that. So if I match my top thread with whatever my background fabric is, then I have a whole lot more forgiveness when it comes to putting the two pieces together. That what if I happen to not stitch that perfectly? And I'm all about building in forgiveness in my projects. I do on the back usually use a contrasting thread. In this case, I used a light gray because that line becomes a stitching line later for you and you need to be able to see it. I got old eyes. I wear glasses. I am okay with having it a little bit lighter. I'm not going to put black on the back of this. I don't want that to be my background color, but I will put something a little bit darker so that it's easier for me to see in the assembly step. So that's my next tip. The last tip that I have is the first one I did, I felt like I wasted a lot of fabric, and I mean a lot. And I'm all about my fabric. So the directions will have you cut a square, put your SF101 on the back, and I cut one of these for each one of them. Well, if you think about it, when it comes to hooping this, I will have to have it larger, much larger than I normally would. Let me take that back. I have to have it larger so that I can hoop it. So I'm going to have much more waist. And I felt like in the first one that I did that was creating a lot of fabric waste, and it just doesn't do my heart well when I have to waste my fabric. So after some contemplation about it, and I was thinking, okay, what can I do to change that? I actually decided that to try something out, and it worked. And I'm going to say since then, I've seen this on other videos. I had not seen this offhand, but after I tried it and I started looking at some other videos to see, hey, are there other tips out there? I did see somebody else do this, and offhand, I love to give credit when credit is due, but I do not remember who it was that did this as well. So this is probably something done by a lot of you. I cut a strip of fabric. Okay, let's go back to our printout. Whatever I did with them, they're right here. I cut the printout. I printed these out because you have to know the size of your design in order to create the square. So I cut this out, and then I made it wider than my strip of fabric, a little bit wider on each side. Okay. And then when I was hooping, I did not cut this. I left it long. And then when I got ready to hoop this in the hoop, I would do my placement line for my batting, trim my batting, and then I used my trimmer by George, and I knew that I needed a 1/2 inch extra, so I used either the 3/4 or the 1 inch line, and on my stabilizer, I just used a pencil or a pen, whatever, because it's going to be cut off, it didn't matter, and I just made a straight line, and outside of wherever my batting might have been. Then I could easily lay this down, the edge of my fabric aligned with that placement line that I just put down. And now when it tacks this down, I only have like 1/4 to a 1/2 inch that I'm cutting off here, not several inches that I would have been cutting off around the edges of this. And I did a little bit of an experiment, and I was able to get 1 whole extra hooping from cutting the strip this way, putting my SF101 on the back and doing it this way. than having to pre-cut the squares as the pattern called for. So I had a lot of savings of fabric that I could then use for either my binding around the inside circle, my ties, or put in my scrap bin for other projects. So I hate when I waste fabric, and I just felt like in the original instructions that there was a lot of waste involved. Those are the only big things that I can think of in hindsight. I did actually use some software to customize the designs so that I could put the family name, whoever's family it was going to, so that they had their own personalized family heirloom. I'm going to do a separate video on how I did that. It was actually very easy. It's not software specific, but I will show you how I did that. And I'm also going to make another video about how I completely customized and used, I'm going to say 60% of what JuJu did, but I really changed it up and was able to really personalize and customize more than just a family name. So those videos are coming next. They'll be out there soon. I hope this helped inspire somebody to go out and not be intimidated by this. It's a large project, but it is not a difficult project. So go out there and challenge yourself if you're a little scared. I hope some of these tips have helped. And if you have any questions about my experience and challenges I may have had or not had, or you have and you want to know how can I overcome that, feel free to email me or contact me here. I'm more than willing to help and answer any questions you might have. I hope my videos are helping you, and if so, please like, share, and subscribe to this video so that you can be notified when I put future videos out there on machine embroidery, long arming, quilting, sewing, lots of various topics. Thanks.